And John, right from the get-go, Liverpool played with real intensity and purpose. It was very impressive.
Yeah, they were by far the better team, Eamon. I think we spoke the other day about Manchester United coming into this particular match. You mentioned there over the years, they haven't won. Liverpool haven't won there, and this is a different Manchester United team, Eamon. Since the last 7 or 8 years, and Liverpool totally outplayed them, and it shows where Liverpool are at the moment and where Manchester United are at the moment, Eamon.
Yeah,
Liverpool very good and Manchester United in a very, very poor position.
Yeah, Liam, the intensity and the tempo right from the get-go was impressive, because the couple of important players missing, James Milner, for example, who's very influential, and the midfield was, Fabinho, Keita and Wijnaldum. No Henderson, no Milner, but they were very, very purposeful. You could tell they weren't afraid of it, and they really could have had 2 or 3 before Mane eventually scored.
That's right. I thought Fabinho had his best game for Liverpool since he's joined. Wijnaldum is a player I like, and he gets around the park. He's good on the ball. He doesn't really give it away. Okay, he's not as creative as you'd like a midfield player to be, but I think he's very, very good as well. And Keita, obviously, he worked his socks off. So the difference there, and right through the teams, was you mentioned the word intensity. One team had it and the other team hadn't. And I listened to Mourinho after the game when he was interviewed, and he was more or less praising this quality in Liverpool's makeup, this intensity that they play with. Well, what exactly is he saying? Because intensity is work rate.
Yes.
Intensity is getting your players to play with spirit, to play with determination, to play with commitment. Why doesn't his team from Manchester United match the other team, or even outdo the other team? It's almost like he's saying after matches, well, I haven't got a team. This other side that beats us, they're a better team than we are. What am I supposed to do? Yeah. And I think it's really, I really think it's telling. John has mentioned over the last few weeks that he's looking for out, and I believe that's the case too. He wouldn't be upset if they relieved him of his duties at Manchester United. I think he'd be glad, because he's fighting a losing battle, and I think he knows it.
Yeah, I mean, we will come to them in a minute in depth. One of the salient facts, John, about that situation with Mourinho and the club is that he signed a new contract in January. He's on 15 million a year. They had no need to give him a new contract, but they did anyway. Liam, there was a very interesting discussion on Sky afterwards between Roy Keane, Graham Souness, Gary Neville, and really it focused on where United go from here. Keane and Souness, and I think to a large extent Gary Neville, really commented on all the money that's been spent, and it's nearly $1 billion, and looking at what's on the field, Herrera, Fellaini, like journeymen really, Lindelof, Ashley Young still playing, Matic now, legs don't appear to have he doesn't appear to have the legs anymore. It's really extraordinary, isn't it? The money that's been spent and the lack of anything really in terms of quality on the pitch.
Yeah, I heard that discussion as well between all those guys after the match, and I actually thought they all body swerved the problem. The problem is Mourinho, and always has been.
Yeah.
He has lost the players. He was asked a question after the match: "Are the players giving you 100%?" And he said, "Well, you're saying the players are dishonest." That's what he said to the guy asking the questions. He dodged the question because they're not giving him 100%. These players are much better than their performance. We've seen all those players underachieve, and he's saying, and quite a few players saying, I think it was Gary Neville saying, more than anyone, that they didn't have a midfield player who could get turned on the ball and pass it and things like that. But Mourinho's bought Pogba and he bought Fred.
Yeah, Fred.
He hasn't. He bought two centre backs that really haven't gelled. And now I don't know whether I think these guys are much better than Mourinho's guessing from them. So I think the panel there on Sky, they dodged the issue. Mourinho is the one, and they should have got rid of him in last October when they had the international break. And I know Neville was saying, well, who do you put in place? You need to put in place a manager who's going to look after the club for the next 3 or 4 years. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you needed to get him out of the club, get somebody in who will get the players back on track, who will get the players buying into the way they want to play. They're not with him, Eamon, and they will not be going forward. So I think they should have nipped that in the bud, a couple of months ago. It started off badly when he was complaining publicly that he didn't get the players that he wanted in the transfer market. You don't do that if you want to work in harmony at a football club. How do the other centre backs feel when he says, "Oh, I need 2 centre backs"?
Yeah.
It's just been poor management for the last 18 months for me. So, and I don't think he was ever a fit. And I think the panel there on Sky, they dodged the real issue.
Yeah, well, I must say, from day one, you were of the view that he wasn't a fit. And I was pretty much, but not as convinced as you were. John, what Gary Neville was trying to say was that this club needs to be looked at from top to bottom, that it wasn't enough to look at Mourinho. His faults are easy to see. He said you have to look at the people who are running the club, and that's Ed Woodward, who's the chief executive, and you have to look at that level because they're the ones who are, and I agree with Neville actually, they're enabling Mourinho. They gave Mourinho, for example, a new 15 million a year contract last January when there was no need to, and this was a key point Neville made. He said he had 18 months to run on his contract. Why give him a new contract at that point? That was a gross mistake, and I think Neville has a point there.
Well, there's a point there, Eamon, but I'd more agree with Liam than Neville in this particular incident.
Yeah.
That was last January. That's 2 years after Mourinho was at the club. Now, what I normally complain about, and I think you normally complain about, is when you don't back the manager.
Yeah.
I felt they were backing the manager. It was a mistake. But you have to go back to what Mourinho's done. And I think the panel did dodge the issue. I agree with Lehman entirely there. The money that he spent, Damon, and all the things that he's done, you see, look what Klopp has done in the few years. Look what Pochettino's doing. Look what Emery's doing at Arsenal already. Sarri at Chelsea.
Yep.
And I've just made out a list this morning. He spent 385 million. And all the players he's fallen out with, Eamon, and Eamon mentioned a point, Lindelof, Shaw, Jones, all centre-halves, Eamon, and 1 or 2 more, that he's saying, I need centre-half. How did they feel?
Yep.
Other players he's fallen out, Mata, Pogba, Shaw, Rashford, Smalling, Lingard, Lukaku, Bailly, Jones, all these guys, he's fallen out with them.
Yes.
He's fallen out with them. How do you expect them to play for them? And many other managers criticise the players as publicly as he does and expect them to play for them. That's why they're not playing for them.
Yeah, and
Roy Keane made the point well, and Roy was talking, I think, from his own point of view. When Roy Keane played, he didn't care who was manager. He was going to go out and do what he does, which made him great. But all players are not like Keane. Players have more sensibilities than Keane has. What they say, well, you've insulted me, you've done this, you've done that. I'm not going. What's morale in the dressing room, Eamon?
Yeah.
It's very hard to define it, but if you start criticising players publicly, you're going to lose that morale in the dressing room, and that's what Mourinho's done. Yeah. And I think he's looking to get out, and I think he should have been. I think he should have been out. I agree with Liam. So I think the board have made a mistake in giving them the new contract, but I definitely wouldn't blame the board. I think Mourinho was doing the stuff that he should be doing as manager for the 15 million he's getting this year. you wouldn't be talking about the board.
No, and just a final point, Liam. There was interesting cutaway shots from the match into the stand. One was Sir Alex Ferguson there, and the other was Bobby Charlton sitting next to Ed Woodward, as it happens. But when you think of Ferguson, when you think in particular of Bobby, who has a great love for the club, but is such a dignified and wonderful person, the antics of Mourinho must disgust them as much as it disgusts everyone else.
Well, yeah, he was never a fit for me. He was always too antagonistic, and he was always it's always about him. When they win, it's down to him. It's down to the fact that he got his tactics right, or he picked the right team, and so forth. When he loses, it's got nothing to do with him. It's down to the players not performing. It's down to the players not playing with the intensity, and so forth. So, yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with Neville up to a point. I don't think Ed Woodward has shown that he's capable of running, the football side of a club like Manchester United. They haven't really replaced that partnership of Ferguson and Gill, David Gill, who was a quiet man. He got on with his work, and if Ferguson wanted somebody, Gill usually got the player for him.
And Gill was sitting beside him yesterday.
I don't think Woodward's had the same skills. I don't think he knows the football side of it.
No.
And I think there's a question mark about his position. I think Neville probably highlighting it so much is probably thinking he could do David Gill or Ed Woodward's job there because I think his coaching career is finished after Valencia. Ongoing problems at Manchester United. I'll go back to when we were down in Cork, me, you, John, and Didi. At the start of the season, there was about 200 people there when we were doing the launch of the podcast.
Yeah.
And we asked about how many Manchester United supporters were there, and it was about 40 put their hands up. And all 40, when I asked them the question, do you want Mourinho at the club? None of them said yes.
Okay, so we have an obvious answer there.